want you to picture something. It's 6 a.m. The Atlanta sun is just barely pushing through the clouds. And I'm standing at my kitchen window in my robe, holding a cup of coffee that's gone cold, watching my husband dig through our trash can in the driveway. Not looking for something he accidentally threw away. Not embarrassed. Not quiet. Frantic. His dress shirt untucked, hands shaking, tossing out coffee grounds and takeout containers, and whatever else was in that bin, muttering to himself like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was about to open up and swallow him whole. And me, I just stood there. Still. The kind of still that comes after you've already cried everything out. The kind of still that means you're ready. My name is Renee Calloway. I'm 38 years old. I've spent 15 years finding lies hidden inside spreadsheets. Turned out I was much better at finding them at work than I was at finding them at home. He wasn't searching for that ring because he regretted throwing it. He was searching because he was terrified of what I might find inside it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. Right now, I always love knowing who's up with me. If you're new here, hit subscribe and don't you dare leave, because trust me, you are going to want to hear every single second of this. But to understand what was really in that trash can and why it scared him more than losing me ever did, I need to take you back. 9 years back, to the woman who said I do and meant every single word. Let me tell you who I was before all of this. I grew up in Decatur, Georgia, about 20 minutes outside of Atlanta, in a house where the lights sometimes got cut off in January, and my mama stretched one pot of red beans and rice to last 3 days. We weren't poor in the way people pity. We were poor in the way that teaches you to be precise, to count everything, to waste nothing. Because when you grow up watching your mother calculate whether she can afford both the electric bill and the groceries, you learn real fast that numbers don't lie. People do. Numbers don't. That's why I became a forensic accountant. Not because it was glamorous, Lord knows it isn't. I sit in conference rooms and stare at spreadsheets for hours. I trace money through shell companies and offshore accounts and dummy invoices until I find the one thread that unravels everything. My job is to find what people hide, what they move around at 3 a.m. hoping nobody notices, what they bury under layers of paperwork thinking it'll stay buried forever. I was good at it. No, I was exceptional at it. By the time I turned 35, I was a senior forensic accountant at Hargrove & Associates, one of the most respected independent auditing firms in Atlanta. I had a team of 6 people under me. I had a reputation that made corporate attorneys nervous when my name showed up on a case. I had worked on 4 federal fraud investigations and helped put 2 executives behind bars. At work, I saw everything. At home, I saw what I wanted to see. That was my weakness. And I knew it somewhere deep down. I always knew it. See, when I was 9 years old, my father walked out. Didn't argue, didn't fight, didn't even leave a note. Just wasn't there one morning. And my mama, she held herself together for us, but I watched something go out in her eyes that never fully came back. I told myself I would never be that. I would never be a woman whose marriage fell apart. I would hold on. I would work harder. I would be enough. That fear, that desperate bone-deep fear of becoming my mother, it made me loyal to a fault. It made me forgive things I should have questioned. It made me smile through dinners when my gut was screaming at me to pay closer attention. It made me the perfect person for Marcus Calloway to marry. I met Marcus at a rooftop fundraiser in Midtown Atlanta in the summer of 2014. He was 42 minutes late, walked in like he owned the building, and somehow ended up standing next to me at the bar. 6'1", broad shoulders. Smile like he'd practiced it in a mirror, but it still worked on you anyway. He was the director of business development at Pinnacle Commercial Realty, one of the fastest growing commercial real estate firms in the Southeast. He talked about Atlanta's development corridors like he had personally laid the asphalt. He was charming in that specific way that makes you feel like you're the interesting one, like he was genuinely fascinated by everything you said.
What do you do?
He asked me. I told him I found lies in spreadsheets for a living. He laughed a real laugh, not a polite one.
Then I better never let you audit me,
he said. I thought that was funny. I should have listened to what he was actually telling me. We dated for 2 years. He was attentive, consistent, generous. He remembered the name of my supervisor who had given me a hard time and asked about it 3 weeks later. He flew me to New Orleans for my 31st birthday Café du Monde, a jazz club on Frenchman Street, the whole thing. He called my mama Miss Beverly and brought her sweet potato pie from her favorite bakery every time we visited. My best friend Diane Foster, who I've known since our freshman year at Spelman, who is now one of the sharpest divorce attorneys in Atlanta, she met Marcus at a dinner party about 4 months in. Afterward in my car, she said,
"He's smooth, Renee. Like too smooth. You know what I mean?"
I told her she was being paranoid. We got married in October 2016. Small ceremony at a venue in Buckhead, 64 people, autumn flowers, the kind of evening where everything looks golden. I wore my grandmother's ring. Not a diamond solitaire, not something picked out of a jewelry case. My grandmother Ida May's ring a simple gold band with a tiny cluster of garnets, the inside engraved with her initials, and the year she married my grandfather, IMC 1959. She passed when I was 14, and that ring was the only thing of hers I had. My mama slid it onto my finger the morning of the wedding and said, "Grandma Ida's watching baby. Make her proud." I promised I would. Our life looked good from the outside. And for a real while, it felt good on the inside too. We had a 4-bedroom house on Wyndham Court in Buckhead, just over 2,400 square feet. A kitchen Marcus had renovated as a surprise for my birthday. A back porch where we'd sit on Sunday mornings and drink coffee and do the crossword. Not always together. Sometimes just near each other. That kind of comfortable quiet that you think will last forever. Marcus made good money. I made good money. We had $47,000 in a joint savings account, a healthy retirement fund, and no credit card debt, because I managed our household finances with the same precision I brought to work. Marcus always joked that nobody in Atlanta had a more organized budget spreadsheet than his wife. He said it like it was cute. Later, I understood why he kept me focused on the household accounts and away from everything else. But in those early years, I believed we were building something real. Then sometime around year 6, I couldn't tell you exactly when, because it happened the way bad things usually do, slowly, and then all at once something in Marcus began to change. Small things at first. He opened a separate business checking account.
For investment purposes, babe, easier to keep it separate for taxes.
I was an accountant. I understood that. I didn't push. He started traveling more. Charlotte, Nashville, Tampa. Sometimes gone 4 days at a stretch.
The commercial real estate market is moving fast right now. I have to move with it.
That made sense too. I didn't push. His phone started staying face down on the counter. He started taking calls in the garage. He started coming to bed after I was already asleep. I noticed. Of course I noticed. I notice everything. But I told myself the story I needed to tell, that we were both busy, that this was just a season, that strong marriages go through quiet stretches. I was a forensic accountant who could detect a fraudulent wire transfer buried inside a 100-page ledger, but I could not or would not detect the fraud happening inside my own home. And then one evening, I was grabbing one of Marcus's dress shirts from the dry cleaning pile to hang it up, and something small and folded fell out of the breast pocket and fluttered to the floor. A slip of paper, hotel stationery, a Marriott on Peachtree Road not 4 miles from our house. Written in Marcus's handwriting, a room number, 412, and below it a time, 11 p.m. No name, no date, no explanation. I stood there in our bedroom holding that piece of paper under the light for a long time. Then I folded it exactly the way I found it, placed it back in the pocket, hung the shirt up in his closet, and I told myself it was nothing. I was very, very good at telling myself it was nothing. Here's what nobody tells you about being in a marriage that's slowly falling apart. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly see it clearly. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in through the side door while you're busy living your life, while you're meal prepping on Sundays and scheduling dentist appointments and answering work emails at 10 o'clock at night. It hides inside ordinary moments, inside the silences between sentences, inside the way someone stops reaching for your hand when you walk through a parking lot and you notice but you don't say anything because maybe you're imagining it and you don't want to be the woman who imagines things. I didn't want to be that woman, so for a long time I wasn't. Let me tell you about our 7th anniversary because I need you to understand that there were real things between Marcus and me. Real moments. I'm not going to stand here and tell you the entire 9 years were a lie because that's not the truth. And I've always been committed to the truth, even when it costs me something. October 2023. Marcus made a reservation at Bones, which if you know Atlanta, you know that's not a casual Tuesday night dinner. That's an occasion. He wore the charcoal gray suit I loved. He had them put a small vase of garnet red flowers on the table, garnets the same color as my grandmother's ring. And when I looked at him across that candlelight, I thought this is still here. Whatever roughness we've been going through, this is still here. He held my hand across the table and said,
7 years, Renee. I wouldn't trade a single one.
I believed him. I want you to know that I believed him with my whole chest when he said that. Because that's the thing about a skilled liar, they don't lie all the time. If they lied all the time, you'd catch them. They tell you enough truth to keep you anchored. They give you just enough real tenderness that when something feels wrong, you point to those moments and say, see, it's fine. It's real. I have proof. That dinner was the proof I held on to for the next 18 months. The second sign came about 2 weeks after our anniversary. I was working from home on a Thursday afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop when I accidentally bumped Marcus's personal MacBook off the edge of the counter, trying to reach for my coffee. The screen lit up when it hit the chair cushion, didn't break, thank God, and I picked it up to set it back. But the screen was open, and what was on it stopped me cold. It was a wire transfer confirmation, $18,000. Sent from an account I didn't recognize, not our joint account, not his personal checking, to an LLC called MBC Holdings. I set the laptop back exactly where it had been. Then I sat back down at my own computer and I typed MBC Holdings, Georgia LLC, into the state business registry search, like I do approximately 40 times a week for work. The registration had 2 names on it, Marcus Bernard Calloway, and a name I didn't recognize yet.
Tanya Briggs.
I closed the search window. I sat very still. I picked up my coffee and I drank it slowly, even though it was cold, and I thought about what I knew and what I didn't know, and what the difference was between a business partnership and something else entirely. I had no proof of anything else. An LLC between 2 colleagues wasn't a crime. People went into business together all the time. I told myself that. I almost convinced myself. 2 weeks later, Marcus's company had their annual fall event, a cocktail reception at a rooftop venue in Midtown, the kind of thing spouses get dragged to and spend most of the evening making small talk with people they'll never see again. I went because I always went. I put on a black wrap dress and smiled and made conversation and held my champagne glass like everything was fine. And that's when I met Tanya Briggs for the first time. She was tall, maybe 5'9" natural hair, pinned up a burgundy dress that fit like it was tailored for her specifically. She worked in commercial sales at Pinnacle Marcus's company. When Marcus introduced us, he put his hand briefly on her shoulder and said,
Tanya's one of our best. She's been with us about 3 years now.
Renee. I've heard so much about you. Marcus talks about you all the time.
Tanya smiled at me with her whole face. I smiled back. All good things, I hope.
Of course,
she said. And then she glanced at Marcus, just for a half second, just a flicker, and something passed between them that I felt in my sternum before I could name it. Marcus didn't touch me once the rest of that evening. Not my hand, not my back, nothing. We stood in the same room for 3 hours and he treated me like a pleasant acquaintance. On the drive home, I said, "You two seem close. You and Tanya."
We work together, Renee. That's what close colleagues look like.
He didn't even look up from his phone. "You never mentioned the LLC," I said quietly.
What LLC?
There was a pause, maybe 2 seconds. MBC Holdings. I saw the transfer on your laptop. Accidentally?
That's a private investment vehicle, Renee. Real estate. Tanya has capital. I have the development contacts. It's strictly business. You of all people should understand what an LLC is.
He sighed this long, slow exhale like I had asked him to explain something painfully obvious. "Why didn't you tell me about it?"
Because it's not relevant to our household finances. You manage the household accounts. This is separate. I didn't think I needed your permission to run my own business ventures.
I didn't say anything else. He turned the music up slightly, conversation over, and I sat in the passenger seat watching the Atlanta lights blur past. I thought about the hotel stationery, the room number, the time, the way Tanya's eyes had flickered to him, the $18,000. I thought about all of it. And then I thought about my parents, my father leaving my mother's eyes going dim, and I pushed it all back down like I was filing it away in a drawer I didn't want to open. Not yet. Not yet. Then about a month later, Marcus's phone rang at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. He was already asleep, or I thought he was. The phone lit up on his nightstand. I wasn't trying to look, but I was lying there awake the way I'd been lying there awake a lot lately. And the screen was right there. And the name on it wasn't saved as a contact. It was just a number. Atlanta area code. Marcus's eyes opened immediately, not slowly, like someone waking up, but immediately like someone who hadn't been asleep at all. He grabbed the phone, silenced it, and slid out of bed without a word. I heard him go down the hallway. I heard the back door to the garage open and close. I lay there in the dark for 23 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. When he came back, he slid into bed and said,
Sorry, client in Dubai. Time difference.
Dubai. Not Singapore this time. Dubai. I said, okay. And I stared at the ceiling and I thought, Renee, you find fraud for a living. You know what avoidance looks like. You know what a cover story sounds like. You know. The next morning I got up early. I didn't touch the box. That's the first thing I want you to understand. I stood on my tiptoes in that hallway closet, fingers resting on the cold metal surface, and I made a deliberate decision to put it back exactly where I found it and walk away. Not because I was afraid of what was inside, because I was a forensic accountant. And I knew better than almost anyone that the most dangerous mistake you can make when you're building a case is moving too fast. You don't touch the evidence before you're ready to use it. You document. You observe. You wait until you have enough that there's no way to explain it away. I had spent 15 years teaching corporations and federal investigators that patience was the sharpest tool in the room. It was time I used it on my own life. So I took a photo of the box with my phone, the exact position, the shelf, the towels around it, and I walked to the kitchen and I poured myself a second cup of coffee. And I sat down and I thought very carefully about what I actually knew versus what I suspected. What I knew, Marcus had a joint LLC with a woman from his office. He had wired $18,000 into it without telling me. He was taking late-night phone calls in the garage. He had a locked metal box hidden in our linen closet. What I suspected, everything else. What I had proof of, not enough. Not yet. 3 days later, something happened that I hadn't planned for. I was at my desk at Hargrove and Associates early afternoon eating lunch at my computer the way I always did when my personal cell phone buzzed with an unknown number. Atlanta area code. Same one I'd seen light up Marcus's phone that Tuesday night. I picked up. Silence for a moment. Then a woman's voice, low, careful, like she was checking to make sure she had the right person. Is this Renee Calloway? Marcus Calloway's wife. My hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? I think we need to talk. I think we both deserve to know the truth about... The line went dead. I called back 3 times. Straight to voicemail. No personal greeting, just an automated message with the number read back to me in a robotic voice. I sat at my desk for a long time after that. My salad sat untouched. My computer screen blurred in front of me. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what she knew. But the way she said we both deserve to know that plural. That we, like she and I were on the same side of something neither of us had asked to be part of. I wrote the number down. I kept it. That evening, Marcus came home in a good mood which had become unusual enough that I noticed it. He brought takeout from our favorite Caribbean place on Peachtree, kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day. Easy, comfortable, the version of Marcus I had married. I watched him move around our kitchen and I thought about the metal box and the phone call and the LLC, and I smiled and said my day was fine and asked about his. He talked for 20 minutes about a commercial development deal in Smyrna. I listened and nodded and asked the right questions. I was very good at listening. After dinner, when Marcus was watching television in the living room, I slipped into our home office, and I did what I do best. I started building a file. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved quietly, carefully. I pulled every document I could access legally, our joint bank statements, property tax records, the state LLC registry court records. I cross-referenced the MBC Holdings registration date against our bank statements and found 3 transfers totaling $31,500 that had left Marcus's personal account in the 8 months prior, all to the same routing number. I noted everything, dated everything, saved everything to an encrypted folder on my work laptop that Marcus had no access to. And then I found the invoice. It came to our home address, which made no sense for a business account forwarded through a P.O. box that had been listed as a secondary address on one of Marcus's older financial documents. A billing statement from a property management company in Alpharetta. Property address I didn't recognize. Billed to MBC Holdings LLC. Amount due, $3,200 monthly lease. Marcus was leasing a property I had never heard of. My hands were steady when I photographed that invoice. That's the thing about doing this work for as long as I had. When you find something significant, you don't fall apart. You go quiet. You file it away. You keep moving. But that night, lying in the dark next to my husband, my chest was so tight, I had to breathe through my mouth so he wouldn't hear me. I made one mistake. I asked him about it. Not directly, I wasn't foolish enough to show my hand. But at breakfast on a Saturday morning, I mentioned casually that I'd noticed a piece of mail come to the house for MBC Holdings and asked if he wanted me to forward it somewhere. The shift in him was immediate. He put his coffee mug down slowly, looked at me across the kitchen island with an expression I hadn't seen before. Not anger, exactly, but something colder than anger. Evaluating, like he was calculating something behind his eyes.
Where did you see that?
It came in with the regular mail, I said. I just thought it was odd getting business mail here. He was quiet for a moment.
I'll handle it. Don't worry about it.
Marcus,
I said I'll handle it, Renee. Why are you always going through things that don't concern you? This is exactly the problem. You can't let anything alone. Everything has to be interrogated. Everything has to be cross-examined. You're my wife, not my auditor.
His voice dropped in a way that made the back of my neck prickle. I felt the heat rise in my face. I wasn't interrogating you. A piece of mail came to our house.
You know what?
He pushed back from the counter, picked up his coffee, turned to leave the kitchen. Then he stopped, turned back. And he said it like he'd been holding it for a long time and had just decided to stop holding it.
You're an accountant, Renee. You count other people's money. That's all you've ever done. Don't come in here trying to audit my life like I'm one of your corporate clients.
The kitchen went very quiet. I didn't say anything. I looked down at my coffee. I heard him walk out of the room. I heard the garage door open. I heard his car back out of the driveway. I sat at that kitchen island for a long time. Outside the window, the azaleas were blooming pink along the back fence, and the morning was perfectly ordinary. And I thought, that's not a man who got defensive because I overstepped. That's a man who got defensive because I got close. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Different from the woman who'd called my office. This one was a 404 number, local Atlanta. I opened it. 3 words. Check his car. I stared at that message for 60 seconds. Then I deleted it, put my phone face down on the counter, and went back to the file I was building. But that evening, when Marcus was in the shower, I walked into the garage. I opened the center console of his car. And there it was, a second phone. Cheap. Prepaid. The kind you buy at a convenience store with cash. Screen locked. But the notification light was blinking soft and steady. Green. Like it had been waiting for me to find it. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Same position. Same angle. Notification light still blinking. I closed the center console. Walked back into the house. Went upstairs. Got into bed. And lay there staring at the ceiling while I listened to the shower running and thought about every single decision I had made in 9 years that had led me to standing in my own garage at 9 o'clock at night, going through my husband's car, like a detective. The shower turned off. Marcus came to bed, said goodnight. Was asleep in 4 minutes, I know, because I counted his breaths until they slowed and deepened and became the breathing of a man with absolutely nothing on his conscience. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning I called Diane. Not to cry, not to vent. I called her the way you call a doctor when you found a lump and you need someone clinical and precise to tell you what you're looking at. She picked up on the second ring.
Talk to me.
She said. I talked for 45 minutes. I told her everything, the LLC, the transfers, the locked box, the prepaid phone, the invoice, the anonymous text. I told her about the woman who called my office and got cut off. I told her about Marcus's face when I mentioned the mail. I told her what he said to me in the kitchen. When I finished, Diane was quiet for a moment.
Renee, baby, listen to me very carefully. Do not move anything. Do not confront him again. And do not under any circumstances let him know what you know.
Diane.
I'm not talking to you as your friend right now. I'm talking to you as an attorney. What you're describing is not just infidelity. That LLC, those transfers, that property, if what you're thinking is true, this is financial fraud. And the way you handle the next few weeks will determine everything. Do you hear me?
I heard her.
Come to my office Monday morning. Don't tell Marcus. Don't change anything in the house. Just come.
That weekend was the longest of my life. Marcus was home both days, which meant I had to perform normalcy for 48 consecutive hours, make coffee, watch television, go to the grocery store, talk about nothing, smile at the right moments. I had always been composed under pressure. It was literally a professional requirement, but performing ease inside my own marriage while knowing what I knew was a different kind of labor entirely. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone. Saturday evening, Marcus got a phone call and stepped outside onto the back porch. Through the kitchen window, I watched him pace the length of the porch 3 times, hand on the back of his neck, nodding slowly at whatever was being said. When he came back inside, his jaw was tight. "Everything okay?" I asked.
Business.
He said. Just that word, like a door closing. Sunday morning, he was gone before I woke up. Back by noon. Wouldn't say where he'd been. I documented both incidents. Time. Date. Behavior observed. I was building a ledger. That's what you do when you're a forensic accountant and your marriage is the fraud you're investigating. You document everything and you wait for the picture to become clear enough to act. Monday morning, I sat across from Diane in her office on Peachtree Street, 15th floor, downtown Atlanta. The city laid out below us like a grid, and I laid out every document I had. She went through it slowly, methodically, the way only a very good attorney does, not reacting to any of it, just absorbing. When she finished, she looked up at me.
This is more than a cheating husband, Renee.
I know.
MBC Holdings, if Marcus is routing company money through that LLC, if he's billing clients and pocketing the difference through a shell structure that's wire fraud, that's potentially federal.
I know. I said again.
Do you want to know something interesting?
Diane folded her hands on the desk.
I have a contact. Harold Webb. He's a special agent with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit here in Atlanta. He reached out to me about 3 weeks ago, completely unrelated to you, about a commercial real estate fraud investigation. He mentioned Pinnacle.
The air in the room changed. He's been investigating Marcus's company.
He's been investigating a pattern of fraudulent contract billing connected to several commercial development deals in the metro Atlanta area. He has the pattern, but he can't find where the money is going. He doesn't have the thread.
I thought about the wire transfers, the LLC, the Alpharetta property, the account numbers I'd memorized. I might have the thread, I said. But before any of that could move forward, Marcus came home that Tuesday evening and made sure I understood exactly where he thought I stood. It started over nothing the way these things always do. I had forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. One item, a suit he needed for a Wednesday morning meeting. He stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at me with an expression that had shed all pretense of the man from the Bones restaurant anniversary dinner.
I asked you one thing, Renee. One thing.
Marcus, I had back-to-back client calls all afternoon. I'll get it first thing in the morning before your meeting.
You had one job here. The house. The errands. I handle everything else, the real money, the real work, and you can't manage a dry cleaning pickup.
The real money, I repeated quietly.
Yes, the real money. You bring home a salary, I build wealth. There's a difference, Renee, even if you don't want to admit it.
I looked at him across our kitchen. This kitchen he had renovated as a birthday surprise, and I felt something in me go very, very still.
Without my name, without my connections, he continued. Who are you? Nobody special. A mid-level accountant at a firm that would replace you in 6 weeks.
He walked out of the kitchen. I stood there. Nobody special. I let it land. I let it sit. And then I did what I had trained myself to do with evidence that makes your blood run cold. I filed it away. I added it to the ledger. I kept my face neutral. And I thought, every word you say to me right now is going to cost you. 2 days later, Marcus told me he'd invited some colleagues over for dinner on Friday evening. Casual, he said. 8 people. He wanted me to handle the food. Friday came. 8 people became 14. The food I'd prepared ran short, and I had to order last-minute catering that cost me $340 out of pocket. I was running between the kitchen and the dining room while Marcus held court at the head of the table, laughing, gesturing, performing the role of generous Atlanta host. Tanya Briggs sat 3 seats down from him, laughing at everything he said. I came out of the kitchen at one point carrying a serving dish and caught the tail end of what Marcus was saying to the group, something about a development deal, about vision, about knowing how to build something from nothing. And then he glanced over at me, serving dish in hand hair slightly out of place from the kitchen heat, and said loud enough for the table to hear with a smile on his face like it was a joke.
That's my wife. She's an accountant. She's very good at counting things.
The table laughed. Tanya laughed. I set the dish down, smiled, went back to the kitchen. And standing at the kitchen counter alone, I thought about my grandmother, Ida May, about her ring on my finger, about the woman who said "I do" in Buckhead in October of 2016 and meant it with everything she had. You know what? I thought. You know what you're going to do? Everything. I just needed one more piece. And then my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Diane. 3 words. Webb wants to meet. I met Harold Webb on a Wednesday morning at Diane's office. He was not what I expected. 50s. Quiet. The kind of man who looked like he taught high school history but had eyes that missed absolutely nothing. He shook my hand, sat down across from me, opened a manila folder.
Mrs. Calloway, tell me what you know about MBC Holdings,
he said. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting for 34 minutes. When I finished, he looked at Diane, then back at me.
In 4 months of investigation, we've been able to establish the pattern, but not the destination. Every trail we follow goes cold at the LLC level. We know money is leaving Pinnacle's client accounts through inflated contractor invoices. We know it's being routed through MBC Holdings. But after that,
he spread his hands on the table.
It disappears.
Offshore, I said.
Almost certainly. But we can't find the account. No paper trail. No digital footprint we can access without a warrant. And we can't get a warrant without probable cause we don't yet have.
I thought about something I'd been turning over in the back of my mind for weeks without knowing why it kept surfacing. Agent Webb, I said slowly, have you ever looked at the ring? Both he and Diane looked at me.
What ring?
Webb said, let me tell you about my grandmother Ida May's ring. She bought it with my grandfather in 1959 at a small jewelry shop in Savannah, Georgia. Simple gold band, garnet cluster, initials engraved inside, IMC 1959. It was the most precious thing I owned. When my mama slid it onto my finger on my wedding day, I promised myself I would wear it every day of my marriage. And I had. Every single day for 9 years. But here's what had been nagging at me since the night Marcus threw it in the trash, something I hadn't been able to articulate until I sat across from a federal agent who couldn't find a missing financial trail. About 3 months before all of this started, before the late-night phone calls, before the dry cleaning fight, before any of it escalated, Marcus had asked me if he could take the ring to get it professionally cleaned and repolished. Said the gold was dulling. Said he wanted to take care of it for me? I had thought that was sweet. I had given it to him without hesitation. He brought it back 4 days later. Said the jeweler had done a beautiful job. And it did look polished. It looked exactly the same. Almost. There was something slightly different about the interior engraving. I had noticed it at the time, a faint sense that the lines were slightly sharper than I remembered. The lettering infinitesimally different. But I had told myself I was being precious about it, that I was imagining things. You're imagining things. How many times had I told myself that in 9 years? That evening, I did something I had been putting off. Marcus was out, another late meeting. Another excuse I no longer bothered to track, and I sat at the kitchen table under the bright overhead light, and I took off my grandmother's ring, and I looked at it. Really looked at it. I got out my work loop, the small magnification lens I kept in my laptop bag for examining document details, and I held the ring under the kitchen light, and I looked at the inside of the band. The garnet cluster. The gold. The engraving. IMC 1959. And below it so small that without the loop and the direct light, you would never see it. So precise that it must have been done with laser engraving equipment. A second line of text. Not letters. Numbers. 23 digits arranged in 2 groups, separated by a small dash. My hands did not shake. That is something I need you to understand. My hands did not shake, because I had been trained for exactly this moment my entire professional life. The moment when the number in the ledger that doesn't belong suddenly reveals exactly where it came from and where it's going. I recognized the format immediately. An account number and a routing number. International. The routing prefix, I knew it from a fraud case I had worked 3 years prior, belonged to a private banking institution in the Cayman Islands. Marcus had laser engraved the access information for his offshore account inside my grandmother's wedding ring. He had given Ida May's ring to a jeweler, someone who worked for him, someone who knew what they were doing and had it modified. He had taken the most sacred thing I owned, the only piece of my grandmother I had left, and turned it into a hiding place for stolen money. The truth didn't just hurt. It gutted me. Like someone reached inside my chest and pulled out everything I had ever believed about my marriage and held it up under the light where I could see exactly what it was. I don't remember deciding to sit down on the kitchen floor, but that's where I was, back against the cabinet, ring in my palm, loop on the tile beside me. When I heard Marcus's car pull into the garage, I was on my feet before the door opened. And then the door opened. Marcus walked in. Tanya Briggs walked in behind him, in my house, at 11:23 at night. She stopped when she saw me. He didn't even flinch.
Renee.
He said my name like it was a mild inconvenience. What is she doing in my house, Marcus? Not a question. I couldn't make it a question. My voice had gone somewhere flat and cold and far away.
We were going over documents for the Smyrna deal. It was late. I invited her in.
In our house, at 11 o'clock at night.
Don't do this. Don't make it into something.
Are you sleeping with her? The kitchen went silent. Tanya looked at the floor. Marcus looked at me, and I watched him make a decision. I watched him decide that the time for pretending was over.
Yes,
he said, just like that. One word. Like he was confirming a calendar appointment. For how long?
2 years.
2 years. Our 7th anniversary. The garnet flowers on the table at Bones. 7 years, Renee. I wouldn't trade a single one. The room tilted. I put my hand on the counter. I want you out of this house, I said.
Actually,
Marcus said. His voice had taken on something I had never heard before, a kind of flat, business-like finality.
I think it's time we talked about a divorce. I've already spoken to an attorney.
You?
It's over, Renee. It's been over.
He looked at me across our kitchen the way you look at something you've already decided to throw away.
And before you get any ideas about what you're entitled to, everything I have is protected. You'll walk away with what you came with, which wasn't much.
I stared at him. He reached out, took my left hand, not gently. pulled my grandmother's ring from my finger, and he walked to the trash can by the back door. The foot pedal. The lid swung open. He dropped it in.
You want the ring back? Go dig it out yourself. That's about all you're worth,
he said. Tanya said nothing. She stood in my kitchen, and she said absolutely nothing. Marcus looked at her. He almost smiled. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time that night. Not crying, past crying. I had cried everything out somewhere between 11:30 and midnight, and now I was just empty. The kind of empty that isn't weakness. The kind of empty that happens when your body has finished processing shock and is waiting for your mind to tell it what to do next. I held my grandmother's ring in my palm under the kitchen light. I thought about Ida May, about a woman who grew up in Savannah in the 1940s with nothing, no safety net, no connections, no name that opened doors and built a life through sheer will and precision and the refusal to be made small by people who thought she was. I thought about my mama stretching red beans and rice for 3 days and never once making us feel poor. I thought about every woman in my bloodline who had been handed something impossible and had found a way through it anyway. And then I thought about 23 digits laser engraved inside a gold band. Something inside me went quiet. Not sad quiet, not broken quiet, dangerous quiet. I got up off that floor at 1:15 in the morning. I washed my face. I made a fresh pot of coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and my work loop and my phone. I photographed every single digit of that account number under 4 different lighting angles until I had images clear enough to read on a courtroom screen. Then I opened a new encrypted folder on my work laptop. I labeled it Project Ida, and I began transferring everything I had built over the past weeks. The LLC documentation, the wire transfer records, the Alpharetta property invoice, the state registry, the bank statements, the photos of the locked metal box, the anonymous text message I had screenshotted before deleting, the prepaid phone documentation, and now 23 digits that led to the Cayman Islands. By 3 in the morning, I had a file that told a story so clean and so complete that I almost admired it. Almost. The way you can admire the architecture of a lie once you understand how it was built. I sent Diane a text. I need to meet with Webb. Tomorrow, if possible. I have everything. Her response came at 3:47 a.m., which told me she wasn't sleeping either.
I'll make it happen. Are you okay?
I looked at that question for a moment. I typed back. I want to tell you what happened the next morning, because this is the part I started this story with, and now you have everything you need to understand it. I woke up at 5:30, made coffee, put on my robe, stood at the kitchen window, and Marcus's car was in the driveway. He had come back sometime in the night. I hadn't heard him, had assumed he'd stayed with Tanya, and now at 6 in the morning he was standing at the trash can in the driveway in his dress shirt from the night before, going through it piece by piece with the focused desperation of a man who has just realized he has made a catastrophic mistake. Coffee grounds, takeout containers, paper towels, all of it going onto the driveway around his feet. His hands were shaking. His face was the color of old concrete. I stood at that window and I watched him, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. Not satisfaction. Not yet. Just clarity. The absolute crystalline clarity of understanding exactly what was happening and exactly what it meant. He had thrown that ring away in anger, in arrogance, in the complete and total certainty that I was too broken and too small and too nobody special to do anything about it. And now, standing in the gray Atlanta morning, surrounded by his own garbage, he was realizing what he had done. The ring was gone, which meant the account number was gone, which meant I had it. I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. I did not go outside. I let him look. After about 20 minutes, he stopped, stood very still in the middle of the driveway, ran both hands over his face. Then he looked up at the house, and he saw me standing at the window. We looked at each other through the glass for a long moment. I raised my coffee cup slightly, the smallest possible acknowledgement. Then I turned and walked away from the window. He came inside 4 minutes later. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop, open coffee in hand, completely composed.
Renee,
His voice was different. The boardroom authority was gone.
the ring? Did you take the ring out of the trash?
I looked up from my laptop. Good morning, Marcus.
Did you take it?
I told you last night I threw it back in the trash. It was just a ring. He stared at me, searching my face for something a crack tell any sign of what I actually knew. I gave him nothing. 15 years of sitting across from corporate fraudsters and depositions had given me a face like still water.
I need it back. He said, the ring, it has sentimental value. I shouldn't have thrown it away.
Sentimental value. I almost laughed. I kept my face perfectly neutral. Then you should have thought about that before you threw it in the garbage. I said pleasantly, I don't have it, Marcus. If you want to dig through the trash some more, be my guest. He looked at me for a long time.
Sign the divorce papers, Renee. I'm having them drawn up this week. The sooner you sign, the sooner we both move on.
Then he said very quietly, send them over. I said, I'll take a look. He left 20 minutes later. I heard his car pull out of the driveway. I waited until the sound of the engine had completely faded. Then I opened my phone and called Diane. He's scared, I said. He came back for the ring.
Good.
Diane said.
That means he knows exactly what he lost. Webb can meet us at 2 o'clock.
Harold Webb listened to everything I had from the night before without changing his expression once. When I showed him the photographs of the engraving, the 23 digits under the loop, he looked at them for a very long time.
Mrs. Calloway, with this account information and the documentation you've already provided, I have enough for a warrant. Probably enough for an arrest.
Then he looked at me and said, How long? I asked.
6 weeks. Maybe 8. We need to move carefully if he gets any indication we're coming. He could try to move the funds offshore to a secondary account.
He won't get any indication, I said. Webb studied me.
You understand what this means? You'll need to go back to that house. Live normally. Don't change your behavior. Don't access any joint accounts unusually. Don't give him any reason to think anything has shifted.
Agent Webb, I said. I have spent the last 2 years not reacting to things I absolutely knew. 6 more weeks is nothing. He almost smiled. Almost. Diane reached across the conference table and put her hand over mine.
We're going to need to talk about the divorce proceedings too. Because when this comes down, and it will come down, we want everything in place so that Marcus cannot move a single asset.
I have a complete financial record going back 4 years, I said. Every account, every transfer, every property. Diane squeezed my hand.
That's my girl.
But Marcus wasn't finished making me pay for having the audacity to still be standing. 3 days after our kitchen confrontation, I got a call from Richard Hargrove, the senior partner at my firm. He asked me to come to his office. I sat across from Richard, a man I had worked for 11 years, a man who had promoted me twice, and he looked deeply uncomfortable. Renee, I received a call yesterday. From Marcus. My stomach tightened. I kept my face still. He expressed some concerns about your mental state. He suggested that given the stress of your personal situation, you might be, his words, accessing client financial records for personal reasons. The audacity. The absolute audacity of that man. Richard, I said, my voice level as a horizon line. In 11 years, have I ever given you a single reason to question my professional integrity? No, he said immediately, which is why I'm telling you about the call rather than acting on it. I want you to know it happened. I nodded slowly. I appreciate that. I walked out of Richard's office and down the hallway to the elevator. I pressed the button. I stood there. I felt the rage move through me like a current, cold and electric and focused. He had gone to my job. While I was already down, while he thought I was broken, dangerous quiet became absolute quiet. I pulled out my phone, sent Webb a single text. He just went after my career. Add it to the file. Webb's response.
Already noted. Stay the course.
I put my phone in my pocket. Okay, Marcus. I said to no one standing alone in that elevator. Okay, 6 weeks. That's how long I had to be someone I was no longer. I had to be the Renee who didn't know. The Renee who was hurt and small and quietly falling apart. The Renee Marcus had decided I was nobody special, a mid-level accountant, a woman who counted other people's money and had nothing of her own worth protecting. I had played roles before. Every forensic accountant does. You sit across from people who have stolen millions, and you ask them calm, neutral questions while your entire mind is mapping the architecture of their lies. You learn to separate your face from your thoughts. You learn that the most dangerous thing you can do in a room with someone who has something to hide is let them see you thinking. I was very, very good at not letting people see me think. So for 6 weeks I performed. Marcus moved officially out of the house in the 3rd week, not to Tanya's apartment, I noted, but to a furnished corporate rental in Midtown that he put on an expense account I now had documented. He came by the house twice a week, sometimes more, always with the energy of a man managing a transaction. Checking on the property, making sure I wasn't moving anything, making sure I was staying small and still and predictable. I was predictable, extraordinarily so. I kept the house exactly as it was. I didn't touch the joint accounts unusually. I went to work every morning, came home every evening, made dinner for one, ate it at the kitchen table where we used to do the crossword on Sundays. I watered the azaleas along the back fence. I waved to our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, when I got the mail. Normal. Completely boringly, reassuringly normal. Meanwhile, in the encrypted folder on my work laptop, Project Ida, the file grew thicker every week. Diane had filed the divorce response on my behalf, pushing back on every asset classification Marcus's attorney had submitted. His attorney was aggressive. A downtown firm that specialized in protecting high-net-worth individuals in divorce proceedings. They came in hard, claiming virtually every asset as Marcus's separate property, offering me a settlement that amounted to the furniture in my home office and 30 days to vacate. Diane called me after the first exchange with opposing counsel.
His attorney is Garrett Phillips. He's good. He's also completely in the dark about what we know.
Good, I said. Let's keep it that way.
Webb confirmed the warrant was issued this morning. They've located the Cayman account. $2.3 million, Renee.
I sat with that number for a moment. $2.3 million. Stolen from clients, from contractors, from business partners, funneled through a shell company that bore his initials and his girlfriend's name, hidden in a ring that belonged to my dead grandmother. When, I asked,
Webb wants to time the arrest to coincide with the divorce settlement conference. Maximum impact. Maximum evidence collection. He wants Marcus in a room where his financial records are already on the table.
When is the conference? 3 weeks from Thursday. Garrett Phillips already confirmed. 3 weeks. I could do 3 weeks standing on my head. In the meantime, Marcus made sure to remind me exactly who he thought he was. He had started bringing Tanya to public places they knew I frequented. Our dry cleaner on Roswell Road, the Whole Foods on Ponce de Leon, the coffee shop 2 blocks from my office where I went every Tuesday morning. Whether it was deliberate or just breathtaking arrogance, I couldn't say. Probably both. I ran into them at the Whole Foods on a Saturday afternoon. Marcus's hand at the small of Tanya's back, both of them laughing at something on his phone. He looked up and saw me in the produce section, a basket over my arm, and his expression went through 3 things in quick succession. Surprise, calculation, and then satisfaction, like he had been hoping for exactly this.
Renee, how are you holding up?
He said pleasantly. Just fine, I said. How are you? Tanya didn't look at me. She studied a display of organic apples with extraordinary focus.
We're great, actually. Really great.
Marcus smiled. He glanced at my basket, chicken breasts, sweet potatoes, a bunch of kale. Dinner for one.
You look tired. You should take care of yourself.
He added. I smiled back at him. I said. Thank you for the concern. I turned and walked to the next aisle. My hands were perfectly steady. My face was perfectly pleasant. Inside, I was thinking, 12 days. Then came the party. 2 weeks before the settlement conference, Marcus hosted what he called a casual gathering at his Midtown rental. 12 people. Catered food. Rooftop terrace. I knew about it because Gloria called me. Marcus's mother. She had been keeping a careful, uncomfortable distance since the separation. She called to tell me she had been invited and was going. Her voice carried the particular tone of a woman who was trying very hard to convince herself that her child was the person she had raised him to be. I told her to go. I told her to enjoy herself. I told her I hoped she had a nice time. What I did not tell her was that 2 days earlier I had done something I want to explain carefully. I had found the email. While preparing the financial documentation for the divorce proceedings Diane had obtained through completely legal discovery channels, a cache of emails from Marcus's business account that had been flagged in the fraud investigation. Most were financial. 2 were personal. One of them was an email Marcus had sent to Tanya 4 months prior. I won't read you the whole thing, but near the end he wrote,
Once the divorce is final, Mom gets cut off too. She's been leeching off us long enough. I've been carrying her for 3 years, and I'm done. We start fresh, just us.
Gloria didn't know. I printed that email. I put it in a plain white envelope. I addressed it by hand, and I mailed it to Gloria's house on Cascade Road on a Tuesday afternoon, with no return address, and no note inside. Just the email, just his words. I want to be honest with you. I don't know exactly what I expected Gloria to do with it. I told myself I was simply ensuring she had information relevant to her own life, that she deserved to know what her son actually thought of her. That was true. But I also knew Gloria Calloway. I had known her for 11 years. I knew she was a proud woman. A woman who had worked double shifts as a hospital administrator for 20 years to put Marcus through school, who had co-signed his first business loan, who had given him $40,000 from her retirement savings 3 years ago when he said he needed capital for a new development deal. Leeching. He had called her leeching. I knew what Gloria would do with that email. I just needed her to do it at the right moment. The night before the settlement conference, Marcus sent me a text at 10:47 p.m.
Tomorrow, you walk out of that courtroom with nothing. Hope you enjoyed the last 9 years?
I read it sitting in bed in the dark. In the house on Wyndham Court where we had done Sunday crosswords and drunk cold coffee on the porch and built what I had believed was a life. I thought about everything. The whole 9 years. The rooftop fundraiser in Midtown where he'd said, I better never let you audit me like it was a joke. The Bones restaurant anniversary dinner. The garnet flowers on the table. The ring my grandmother wore for 53 years before she died, turned into a hiding place for stolen money. I thought about standing at the kitchen window watching him dig through garbage with shaking hands. I thought about Nobody's Special. And that's all you've ever done. And go dig it out yourself. That's about all you're worth. I put my phone face down on the nightstand. I closed my eyes, and I slept better than I had slept in 2 years. Deep. Still. Complete sleep. The sleep of a woman who has done everything she needed to do and is simply waiting for morning. Let him enjoy his last night of feeling powerful. I thought right at the edge of sleep. Tomorrow everything changes. The morning of the settlement conference, I woke up at 5:45. I showered. I did my hair. I put on the charcoal blazer I wore when I testified in federal court, the one Diane called my "don't play with me" blazer. I made coffee. Drank it standing at the kitchen window the way I had stood there the morning Marcus tore through the garbage with shaking hands. I looked at the azaleas along the back fence. I looked at the quiet street. I looked at the house around me, the kitchen he had renovated, the porch where we drank coffee on Sundays, the 4 walls that had held 9 years of a life I had believed in completely. I picked up my grandmother's ring from the nightstand where it had sat every night since I retrieved it from that trash can. I held it for a moment. Thought about Ida May. About Savannah in 1959, and a woman who built everything she had from nothing and left it in a gold band for her granddaughter to carry. I've got it from here, Grandma. I thought. I put the ring in my blazer pocket. Not on my finger, in my pocket. For today, I needed both hands free. Diane's firm was on Peachtree Street, 15th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, Atlanta laid out in every direction like it was waiting to see what happened next. I arrived at 8:40. Diane was already there. 2 coffees on the conference table. A stack of documents organized with the precision of someone who had been awake since 4 in the morning. She looked at me when I walked in.
You ready?
I've been ready for 6 weeks. I said. At 9:15, Marcus arrived with Garrett Phillips, his attorney. Tall, silver-haired. The kind of man who charged $800 an hour and knew it. Marcus was in his best suit, navy, custom fitted, the one he wore to the biggest deals. He looked rested, confident. He walked into that conference room like a man who had already won and was simply here to collect. He glanced at me across the table and almost smiled. Almost. The particular almost smile of a man who believed the woman sitting across from him had nothing left. Garrett Phillips opened his briefcase and laid out a settlement document, 42 pages, that gave me the bedroom furniture, my personal vehicle, and a 12-month spousal support payment that worked out to $2,200 a month. Everything else, the house, the investment accounts, the retirement funds, every asset Marcus had classified as separate property, went to him. Diane slid the document back across the table without opening it.
We won't be signing that.
She said pleasantly. Phillips looked at her. Mrs. Foster, your client, has no legal claim to assets acquired through Mr. Calloway's independent business ventures. The prenuptial framework clearly...
There is no prenuptial framework,
Diane said.
Your client chose not to pursue a prenuptial agreement. We checked.
Phillips glanced at Marcus. A tiny flicker of something. Marcus leaned back in his chair, completely unbothered.
Diane, let's not waste each other's time. Renee has no documentation, no legal standing, and no leverage. Whatever she thinks she has.
He looked directly at me. His voice dropped to something private and almost gentle. The voice he used when he wanted to remind me exactly where I stood.
It's not enough. It was never going to be enough.
He paused. Let it land.
I told you you'd walk out with nothing. I'm a man of my word, Renee.
Then, there it was. The last one. The final declaration from a man standing at the very top of his certainty, looking down. I held his gaze. I said nothing. Diane opened her own folder.
Before we continue,
she said,
we'd like to introduce some additional parties to the conversation.
She nodded toward the door. It opened. Harold Webb walked in first. Dark suit, FBI credentials already in hand. The quiet authority of a man who had been building toward this moment for 4 months. Behind him came 2 colleagues I hadn't met, both carrying document boxes. Marcus's almost smile disappeared. Phillips sat up straight. What is...
Garrett Phillips,
Webb said.
I'm Special Agent Harold Webb, FBI Financial Crimes Unit. We have a warrant for the seizure of financial records related to Marcus Bernard Calloway and MBC Holdings, LLC, in connection with an ongoing investigation into wire fraud, money laundering, and misappropriation of client funds totaling approximately $2.3 million.
The room went very still, and then the door opened a second time. Gloria Calloway walked in. She was dressed like she was going to church, her good coat, her good shoes, her silver hair pinned back the way she always wore it to important occasions. She was 71 years old. She walked into that conference room with her spine straight and her chin level, a plain white envelope in her right hand. Marcus's face. I want to describe this to you carefully because I need you to understand what it looked like to watch a man's entire architecture collapse in real time. The color left his face starting at the forehead and moving downward like a shade being drawn. His jaw loosened. His eyes went to his mother and stayed there with an expression I had never seen on Marcus Calloway in 9 years. Something that was almost a child's expression, almost bewildered, almost please not you.
Mom,
he said. Just that, like a question. Gloria walked to the table. She placed the white envelope in front of Diane without looking at her son. Then she looked at him. I raised you, she said. I worked double shifts for 20 years to put you through school. I gave you $40,000 from my retirement 3 years ago because you said you needed it. And you called me a leech. Marcus opened his mouth. Don't, Gloria said quietly. Don't you say a word to me right now. She turned. She walked to the window and stood with her back to the room. Garrett Phillips grabbed his client's arm and leaned in close, whispering urgently. Marcus wasn't listening. His eyes had gone to Webb's document boxes, to the warrant, To the stack of financial records Diane was now spreading across the conference table, wire transfers, LLC registrations, the Alpharetta property lease, the offshore account documentation. And at the center of it all, a photograph of the inside of a gold ring under a magnification loupe. 23 digits laser engraved beneath my grandmother's initials. His hands started trembling. Not slightly, genuinely trembling. Both of them. So that when he reached out to touch the photograph, his fingers shook against the paper.
That's not...
His voice cracked. That same voice that had told me I was nobody special. That same voice that had said, go dig it out yourself, that's about all you're worth. Cracked right down the middle in front of everyone. Sweat had appeared at his temples. He ran a hand over his face. It came away damp. I need a moment with my client, Phillips said sharply.
Of course,
Webb said.
We'll be right outside.
He didn't get a moment that changed anything, because Diane was already speaking, her voice clear and unhurried, addressing the room the way she addressed juries, making sure every word landed exactly where she intended it.
Mr. Calloway, over the course of 9 years of marriage, your wife, a senior forensic accountant, documented every fraudulent transfer, every shell company transaction, every offshore movement connected to MBC Holdings. You once told her that all she did was count other people's money.
Diane paused.
She counted yours.
Phillips put his hand on Marcus's arm. Marcus shook it off. He looked at me, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, what I saw in his face was not arrogance or calculation or the managed performance of a man in control. It was fear, real unmanaged animal fear.
Renee,
he said. His voice had gone quiet.
Renee, listen. We can talk about this, just the two of us. Whatever you think you need, I can make this right. I'll give you the house. I'll give you whatever you want. Just tell them to wait, please.
Please. Marcus Calloway said please. I let the words sit in the air between us for a moment. I thought about the kitchen floor at 11:30 at night. The trash can. The ring. The engraving. Go dig it out yourself. I thought about my grandmother, Ida May, who never once in her life let someone make her feel like she was worth less than she was. I straightened my blazer. I looked at my husband of 9 years, this man with the shaking hands and the sweat at his temples and the cracked voice, and I said quietly and clearly, and without 1 degree of heat, "You're not sorry, Marcus. You're just sorry you got caught." I turned to Webb. "Agent Webb, I think you have everything you need." They arrested Marcus Bernard Calloway at 11:08 a.m. on a Thursday in late February in a conference room on the 15th floor of a Peachtree Street office building with the Atlanta skyline behind him and his mother standing at the window with her back turned. Tanya Briggs, upon being notified by a colleague that FBI agents were present at the settlement conference, left the Pinnacle Commercial Realty offices at approximately 10:55 a.m. and did not return. She was later interviewed as part of the investigation. She cooperated fully. The LLC she co-owned with Marcus was dissolved. The Alpharetta property was seized. The Cayman account, $2.3 million, was frozen pending federal proceedings. Garrett Phillips withdrew from the case 4 days later. Marcus's employment at Pinnacle Commercial Realty was terminated effective immediately, and I walked out of that building at 11:24 a.m. into a February morning in Atlanta, the sun cutting bright and cold through the downtown towers. I stood on the sidewalk on Peachtree Street, and I breathed, just breathed. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Gloria. She came to stand beside me on the sidewalk, her good coat buttoned to the collar, her silver hair catching the light. We stood there together for a moment without speaking. "I'm sorry, baby. I should have seen it sooner." Then she said very quietly, I put my arm through hers. "So should I," I said. "So should I." We stood there together on Peachtree Street, 2 women he had underestimated, and we watched Atlanta go about its morning. 8 months later, I want to tell you what a Tuesday morning looks like now. I wake up at 6:15, not because I have to, but because I genuinely want to see the light come through the windows of my apartment. It's a 2-bedroom on the 14th floor in Midtown Atlanta, about a mile and a half from my office, with floor-to-ceiling windows on the east side that catch the morning sun in a way that still stops me sometimes when I come out of the bedroom. Like the city is reminding me it's still here. Like it's been waiting for me to finally show up and see it properly. I make coffee a good cup, not rushed, not made while listening for someone else's mood to announce itself from the other room. I stand at those east-facing windows in my robe, and I drink it slowly, and I think about whatever I want to think about. Not about what I forgot to do. Not about whose dry cleaning needs picking up. Not about how to make myself smaller so the morning stays peaceful. Just whatever I want. That is not a small thing. I need you to understand that is not a small thing. Let me tell you what happened in the 8 months between that February morning on Peachtree Street and this Tuesday in October. Marcus Bernard Calloway was indicted on 6 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of misappropriation of client funds. His federal trial is scheduled for March of next year. His attorneys, he's on his 3rd set now because federal fraud defense is expensive, and the Cayman account has been frozen, have indicated he may pursue a plea agreement. The $2.3 million remains frozen. The Alpharetta property was seized by federal authorities. His employment at Pinnacle Commercial Realty ended the same day he was arrested. Pinnacle itself is under a separate regulatory investigation. He is currently living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Decatur, which I know because Gloria told me, not because I've been paying attention, paying rent for the first time in 11 years, with no assets, no savings, no professional reputation, and no one waiting for him when he comes home. Tanya Briggs cooperated with the federal investigation and received immunity in exchange for her testimony. She moved to Charlotte. I don't know what her life looks like now, and I find that I genuinely don't think about it. The LLC called MBC Holdings was formally dissolved on a Wednesday afternoon in April. I only know the date because Diane texted me when it happened. I was in a client meeting. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. I excused myself for 30 seconds. I read the text. I thought, good. Just that. Good. Then I went back into the meeting. The house on Wyndham Court sold in 6 weeks. The proceeds after legal fees and the mortgage balance came to $214,000, which the court divided as marital property. My half went into a savings account I opened in my name only at a bank Marcus had never banked at with an account number nobody had engraved inside anything. I bought furniture I actually liked. A reading chair by the east windows. A kitchen table that seats 2, because I don't need a table that seats 8 people I'm performing normalcy for. Bookshelves I've filled slowly, deliberately with books I actually intend to read. A coffee maker that takes 4 minutes and makes the best cup I've ever had in my own home. Small things. Enormous things. My work changed too. Richard Hargrove called me into his office 6 weeks after the arrest. He sat across from me and said without preamble, "What Marcus did calling me, trying to undermine you here, I want you to know that it didn't work because you had 11 years of unimpeachable work behind you. That's what protected you. You protected yourself. I appreciated that." I told him so. 3 months later, I was approached by a colleague of Agent Webb's, a senior attorney at the Department of Justice's Fraud Division, about consulting on a complex, multi-state financial fraud case. Contract work. Independent. The kind of case that gets written about in law journals. I said yes. I have since taken on 2 additional federal consulting contracts. I am building something that is entirely mine, not a salary someone else controls, not a position that depends on a man's goodwill or a firm's politics. Mine. Built from the same skills I used to dismantle everything Marcus tried to hide. He told me I counted other people's money. He was right. And I am very, very good at it. Gloria and I have dinner every other Sunday. That surprised me more than almost anything else about this new life. I had assumed that the end of my marriage meant the end of that relationship, that she would grieve her son privately, and I would become a chapter she closed. But Gloria Calloway is not a woman who closes chapters quietly when she believes she owes someone something. She showed up at my apartment door 6 weeks after the arrest with a sweet potato pie and a bottle of good wine, and she said, "I know I don't have the right to ask to come in." but I'd like to if you'll let me. I let her in. We sat at my small kitchen table. We ate pie, drank wine, talked for 4 hours. About Marcus some, about her more, about me the most. She told me things about Marcus's childhood that explained some things and excused nothing. She told me about the moment she read that email sitting at her kitchen table on Cascade Road, reading her son's words, leeching, cutting her off, starting fresh without her, and deciding what she was going to do about it. He thought I would choose him anyway, she said. He always thought that I would choose him over the truth because he was mine. She shook her head slowly. I didn't raise him to be what he became, and I am not going to pretend I did. I reached across the table and held her hand. We are not mother and daughter. We are something harder to name than that. 2 women who were both deceived by the same person, who both had to decide what they were made of when it mattered. That's its own kind of bond. I don't have a word for it. I don't think I need one. And the ring. My grandmother Ida May's ring the gold band with the garnet cluster, the initials the year. The ring Marcus had desecrated and then thrown away like it was nothing. I took it to a master jeweler on the east side, a woman named Patricia, who's been restoring antique jewelry for 30 years. I sat across from her. I explained what had been done to it. The laser engraving beneath the original inscription. The modification. Patricia worked on it for 3 weeks. She removed every trace of what Marcus had added. She restored the interior to exactly what it had been IMC 1959. Nothing else. Nothing more. She repolished the gold. Reset the garnets. She handed it back to me in a small velvet box on a Friday afternoon. I held it under the shop light. I looked at the inscription. I thought about Ida May in Savannah in 1959, young, hopeful, putting on a ring that meant something. I felt something release in my chest that I hadn't even fully known was still clenched. I don't wear it every day. I wear it when I need to remember who I come from. When I need to remember that the women in my bloodline have always found a way through the impossible. I wear it on days when I need to feel like I am walking into something important. I wore it on a Tuesday in February when I walked into a federal building to give my formal deposition. I wore it on the day I signed my first independent consulting contract. I will wear it on the day Marcus goes to trial. Not for him. Never again for him. For her. I want to say something to you directly now, to whoever is listening to this wherever you are. Maybe you're in a situation where someone has been telling you that you're not enough, that you're nothing without them, that the value you bring to your own life doesn't count as value because it doesn't look like what they think power should look like. Maybe someone has been taking the most sacred parts of you, your trust, your loyalty, the best years of your life, and using them as hiding places for their own greed. I want you to hear this clearly. The thing they are trying to convince you is your weakness. It is almost certainly your greatest weapon. I counted numbers for a living. He tried to use that against me. He used my precision, my patience, my systematic mind as a punchline. She counts other people's money, that's all she does. He never once considered that the woman he was laughing at was the same woman who would dismantle everything he built one ledger line at a time. Know what you're worth. Document everything. And do not let anyone convince you that your particular kind of intelligence, your particular kind of strength doesn't count, because it doesn't make noise. The quietest ones in the room are often the most dangerous. I know that now. My name is Renee Calloway. I am 38 years old. I am a forensic accountant, a federal fraud consultant, a granddaughter of Ida May, a daughter of Beverly, a woman who spent 9 years being told she was nobody special. And I am the woman who counted every number, found every lie, recovered every hidden thing, and walked out of that building on Peachtree Street into the Atlanta sun with my grandmother's ring in her pocket, and not one single thing left to prove. That's who I am. That's who I chose to become. And nobody gets to take that from me again. If this story moved you, if any part of it felt like something you needed to hear today, drop a comment and tell me where you are and what's on your heart. You are not alone in whatever you're carrying. If you're new here, subscribe and stay close. There are more stories coming, and every single one of them is about women who found their way through the fire and came out standing. I'll see you in the next one.